Hello everyone, good evening. I'm Shreya Dhondial. As always, it is good to see you. As the Russian offensive against Ukraine continues into its 8th day and the two sides get ready to come to the peace table for a second time today, President Putin has sounded out an ominous warning. He says he will achieve his goal of demilitarizing Ukraine in any case with or without these talks, essentially saying he will not stop, and at this point, no one can stop him either. And by the time he is done, there will be no Ukrainian military to speak about. The Ukrainians, heavily outgunned and outnumbered, have managed to stall the Russians so far at least, but we know that this is not a fair fight. India, that so far has chosen to remain neutral on the issue, will be coming under intense pressure from its Quad partners today, who will be holding a virtual meeting. We are getting you live reports and ground reports from Ukraine on Debrief this evening. Let's start with the big strikes that we saw today. First up, a picture that came to us by way of the Ukrainian Defense Ministry. This is artillery at work. This video was released, as I said, by the Ukrainian Defense Forces, showing a volley of artillery fire that was launched ostensibly at Russian forces. The Ukrainian forces have claimed to have inflicted heavy damages to enemy tank and vehicles as well. But as we see these pictures, the Russians are also marching on. We know what the force differential is looking like. In this video that you're seeing, we can see many more Russian military vehicles advancing towards Kharkiv. Kharkiv is the second largest city in Ukraine. It is a city that has seen heavy shelling over the last few days. The video of the missile attack on the police headquarters that had destroyed the Freedom Square is still fresh in public memory. That video had come, remember, from Kharkiv as well. Most of the city has been reduced to rubble after those strikes, but the Ukrainians somehow are still managing to hold on to Kharkiv. Kherson, another big town, has already fallen. Mr. Putin has also set sights on Kiev, the capital city, the largest city, the crown jewel of Ukraine. What you're seeing on your screens, airstrikes on the city intensifying. The building that you're seeing used to be a school, completely decimated in the airstrike. We've been talking about this for a long time now. The 64-kilometer long convoy waiting at Kiev's gate, ready to storm the city. It's likely, and this is what analysts are saying, that once the Russians have taken Kharkiv, all guns will be trained on Kiev. But irrespective, these are the pictures that are coming into us from Kharkiv. In Kiev, we saw a very powerful explosion today. Take a look. These are the pictures. This blast took place near the railway station. People are still fleeing this war zone. Many of them are dependent on the railways to take them out of the war zone into safer areas. Already there's a refugee crisis brewing. More than 10 lakh people have left Ukraine as we see. The next set of pictures we'll get you are from a city called Chernihiv, which is again battered. These are the pictures. The Russians, of course, vehemently denying attacking any civilian or residential areas. But the pictures, of course, speaking a different story, not just from this city, but cities across Ukraine. We can see buildings that are struck by missiles, burning and crumbling. There's rubble all around, and these are residential buildings. We have seen pictures of hospitals and maternity wards that have been targeted as well. And finally, we are moving to a picture a video actually that has now gone viral. What you see on your screens, the man who's sipping his tea, is a Russian soldier captured by Ukrainian forces. Now, despite being a prisoner of war, he was given a warm meal, a cup of tea and some food, and then he was allowed to make this video call back to his family. What you'll hear is this soldier speaking to his mother. And what the Ukrainian forces, who are patting him on the back and telling him to hold on, are telling his mother is that if you want to come and pick up your son, you're free to do so. Listen in to that video.
Колонны ваших русских солдат разбитые в хлам стоят. Забираются, пускай уходят пацаны.
Now, many may say this is a propaganda video that has been released by the Ukrainian military, and it very well may be so. But the fact is, this is war, and both sides will use whatever means to also win the battle at the perception zone. Now, Russia's military offensive, as you know, continues. We've just shown you proof of that. And all indication is that it will only escalate. Today, an Estonian cargo ship was hit and sunk near the Ukrainian coast. Russia does not want to stretch this conflict. The resistance put up by Ukraine has set their plans back by a bit, but they will want to end this quickly because they are suffering losses as well. But the Ukrainians are not making things easy for the mighty Russians. Lviv, quite so far, is preparing for the battle to come. CNN's Anderson Cooper is on the ground getting us this report.
In an old factory in Lviv, they prepare for war as best they can, welding steel to block roads, hedgehogs they're called.
These are most effective, I'm told, when the ground is soft and that they can get dug down into the earth, or perhaps even on a cobblestone street, they could dig down between the cobblestones. But with a hedgehog this size, it's unlikely to be able to stop a Russian tank, but perhaps a vehicle or Humvee.
Lviv has so far been mostly unscathed. At night, air raid sirens sound, but the fight is still further east. Each night, each day, the determination here grows. At a brewery in Lviv, they now make Molotov cocktails. Taras Maselko says they've made 2,000 at least, using empty bottles of a popular anti-Putin beer.
It's Putin Huilo, which means Putin dickhead, and you would see...
Wait, the beer is called Putin Dickhead?
Yeah.
How long have you been making Putin Dickhead
it's
beer?
Actually, we started to brew this beer in 2015 because in 2014 the Russians came to Crimean Peninsula and got it, and in eastern regions, so this label has a history already. So.
Wow.
Yeah, but you see normally...
That's quite the image.
It's a primitive weapon, but potentially deadly. These Molotov cocktails also have additional materials in them to ensure the fire will stick to whatever it's thrown at.
Petrol alone isn't good enough. You want something to make it sticky so that it sticks on a person.
Stick on the surface.
When we got here to the factory, there was a group of maybe 70 or so men who were all standing around a car, and there was somebody in a uniform, Ukrainian in a uniform, who was explaining to them how to throw a Molotov cocktail inside a vehicle to the best effect. There's a lot of people here who are trying to get as much training as they can in order to be able to face Russian forces if and when they come.
In another neighborhood, residents gather supplies and send them wherever they're needed. Spike strips to puncture tires, flak jackets with metal plates inside. We're continually sending them to our guys there throughout the day, he says. Here you can see camouflage nets that are used as a cover so that the enemy doesn't know where our tanks and armored personnel carriers are located. In other rooms, we have medicine and groceries. A week ago, he was a construction worker, but then Putin invaded and everything changed.
You have a message to Vladimir Putin. What is it?
What would I tell him, he says? I would tell him he can go f himself. 14-year-old Andri's school is closed. He says volunteering makes him less nervous about the war.
Are you scared?
On first day I was, but now I understand that we need help and support our soldiers and people, and then we will live in peace. In peace.
Before leaving, we meet Pavlo and his son Artur, just 10 months old, wrapped in the Ukrainian flag. He told me, I just want to say my son Artur will learn to say glory to Ukraine faster than he says mom or dad.
Those will be his first words, Slava Ukraini?
Yes.
You really have to stand up and salute the people of Ukraine for doing what they are. Now, every conflict throws up a rock star weapon. In Ukraine's case, it is the anti-tank missile called Javelin that has been such a lifesaver that it has now achieved godlike status. Little wonder that people in Ukraine are calling it Saint Javelin. Now, what is the Javelin missile and why are the Ukrainians completely in love with it? Take a look. As the war rages on in Ukraine, Their forces, outgunned and outnumbered, have put up a brave fight against the mighty Russian army. And they have a saint to thank. Ukraine's most lethal weapon, the Javelin missile systems, have been lifesavers, quite literally. Little wonder that Ukrainians on social media are calling them Saint Javelin. These anti-tank missiles will be crucial to protect Kyiv against the 64-kilometer-long Russian military convoy that is waiting at the capital's gates. The Javelin Close Combat Missile System is a medium-range tactical missile system. It has infrared guidance system capable of destroying tanks. Its high explosive anti-tank warhead can attack tanks from overhead. The Javelin missiles are extremely convenient to use. They can be transported and fired by a single soldier, measuring 1.2 meters in length and weighing about 22 kgs. The Javelin has enough firepower to pierce a tank armor from a distance of 2.5 kilometers. The Javelin is a shoot-and-scoot weapon, which means soldiers can run after firing them. The anti-tank weapon was made by US defense giants Lockheed Martin and Raytheon in the late 1980s, but it was first used by the US Army during the Iraq War in 2003. Russia has an estimated 12,000 tanks, including the highly advanced T-72B3 and the Armata tanks. The Ukrainians have just 2,500. Ukraine believes its short-range air defenses and anti-tank weaponry, including Javelin missiles, may help slow down Russia's advance. In January, the US delivered military assistance of $200 million to Ukraine, which included 300 Javelins. The US, UK and Baltic nations have sent these Javelins to Ukraine amidst the ongoing crisis. Saint Javelin has now become a symbol of resistance in Ukraine. In war-torn Ukraine, an image of Mary in green army fatigues holding a javelin has been widely shared. With Natasha Menden in New Delhi, I'm Shreya Dhondia. Now, at the beginning of the Russian invasion of Ukraine, President Putin had said that he wants to denazify Ukraine, justifying Russia's attack on them. Interesting, because President Zelensky is Jew and Ukraine has a large Jewish population living in the country. In fact, one of the largest in the world. CNN's Sam Kiley is visiting a Jewish pilgrimage site where the synagogue is providing a bomb shelter, not just for Jews, but non-Jews as well. Take a look.
Air raid sirens in Uman. Civilians seeking shelter from Russian bombs in what Vladimir Putin says is partly a campaign to rid Ukraine of a Nazi leadership. The absurdity of this claim lost on no one here heading to the basement of a synagogue.
The Jewish population of Ukraine has suffered terribly over the last few hundred years. It's had pogroms that have been inflicted on it by the Tsarist regime. It suffered miserably under Stalin, and of course the Jews here were murdered en masse by Hitler.
The tomb of Rabbi Nachman of Breslov is a pilgrimage site for thousands of Hasidic Jews and has flourished under Ukraine's recent governments. Now the streets of its Jewish community are almost deserted, the result of Putin's so-called denazification program. A military site in the town was bombed on day one of the Russian campaign against Ukraine.
Do you think Ukraine has a government of National Socialists, of Nazis? That is what Putin says.
No, I think there is, in Ukraine, you see that Ukraine in the last year, they give us to come to Rabbi Nachman. They don't make us problem.
I have been living here for 7 months, and it's been amazing, very loving and very caring to the Jewish people.
Putin's called on Ukraine's military to rise against the government, which he says is a gang of drug addicts and neo-Nazis who settled in Kiev and took the entire Ukrainian people hostage. On Tuesday, Russian bombing of Kiev's radio tower also damaged a Holocaust memorial at the Babi Yar, where more than 30,000 people were murdered in 1941. Many tens of thousands were murdered later. Now, Ukraine's Jewish president suggested that Putin is following Hitler's lead. He said this kind of a missile strike demonstrates that for many people in Russia, our Kyiv is absolutely alien. They don't know anything about our capital, about our history. But they have an order to erase our history, to erase our country, to erase all of us. In Uman, the synagogue's underground mikveh bathing complex is a bunker for Jew and Gentile alike.
I knew that Uman is Jewish, but exactly this place where we are, I just know that it's a bomb shelter and it's safe to be here. That's why I am here.
Like many people in this town, Dasha and her family are joining an exodus out of Ukraine. For those left behind, there's little but the promise of a long, hard winter.
There is more news that has come in on the crisis. A Western intelligence report that has been reported by the New York Times is indicating that Chinese officials in early February knew that a Russian invasion was coming. In fact, they requested senior Russian officials wait until after the Beijing Olympics had finished before beginning an invasion on Ukraine. After Mr. Putin and Xi Jinping's meeting on the sidelines of the Games, Moscow and Beijing had issued a rather lengthy joint statement condemning NATO's expansion, a key pillar of Mr. Putin's justification of attacking Ukraine. I'm going straight across to Atika Schubert, who is joining us live from Lviv in Ukraine. Atika, good to have you on the show once again. What are the Chinese saying about this report that they knew beforehand that an attack on Ukraine was coming? In fact, they asked the Russians to delay it. And what more is this New York Times report saying?
Well, China has completely denied that report, saying that it did not ask Russia to delay an invasion. This is something that not just the U.S. intelligence apparently had seen, but other Western nations as well. I mean, it would certainly indicate a much more closer relationship between China and Russia over this invasion, if it is true. But again, China continues to deny it. There is some evidence to suggest that perhaps the invasion was meant to take place earlier. There's been some speculation that it was planned earlier in February, but that it had been delayed for various reasons, possibly the Olympics, for the Winter Olympics, but also because of the information leaks, the intelligence leaks that were coming out from the U.S. with U.S. President Joe Biden, for example, saying that an invasion was imminent and that a false flag operation could be set, that all of this information that was coming out may have thwarted the initial plans of the Russian invasion. It's hard to know. Obviously, this is intelligence coming in from various sources, and China denies all of this. But it's still very interesting to note that this could have happened at a much earlier date.
Yes. I also want to ask you very quickly what the situation on the ground is. We've seen more Russian troops move towards Kharkiv. Those pictures have come to us. There have been reports on the ground, and one of your colleagues was on the ground getting us a report from Lviv on how Lviv is planning for the battle to come. Could you tell us if you have seen an increase in the intensity of Russian attacks, if you've seen a decrease? What is it that you're seeing?
We are definitely seeing an increase in Russian attack, and that is mostly in two areas. The eastern Ukrainian city of Kharkiv. This is the second biggest city in the country with about 1 million residents. And for the last 48 hours, it has endured a pounding, shellings, rocket attacks, missile attacks. At least 3 schools have been hit. A hospital has been damaged. Residential areas also targeted, and that's killed a number of civilians. We haven't seen Russian troops moving in as much, but we have seen this, this pounding of aerial attacks. The other area where we're seeing an intensification of the fighting is in the southern corridor between the port city of Odessa and the eastern provinces of the Donbass. This, in particular, the city of Kherson. This is a small city of just a few 100,000 residents, but it's strategic because of its location just above Crimea and between Odessa and the eastern provinces. It seems that what the Russian military is trying to do here is to secure a land corridor that would cut off Ukraine from the Black Sea. So that's where we see the two fronts of the war at the moment.
And my last question to you, Atika, the peace dialogue, as it were, is supposed to begin anytime now. We don't know when. Is anyone expecting anything out of it, given the ominous warnings that the Russian president has put out today in the phone call with the French president?
Yes, I mean, the answer is no, but you're absolutely right. There was that phone call between Russian President Vladimir Putin and French President Emmanuel Macron, in which President Putin reiterated that Russia's military objectives would be achieved regardless. What's clear is that the Russian delegation is already at the negotiating table. The Ukrainian delegation is on the way. Nobody is expecting a major breakthrough, to answer your question. However, there is some hope that they may be able to negotiate humanitarian corridors to get residents out of some of those besieged cities like Mariupol and Kharkiv, to be able to get them out to a safer location to minimize civilian casualties.
All right, Atika, we'll leave it there for the moment. The Russian invasion has forced Ukrainians out of their homeland. Nearly 1 million people have already exited the country. While most are fleeing to Poland, many are taking trains to Hungary as well. CNN's Ivan Watson is on the ground getting us this report.
The train to safety arrives 20 minutes late, rolling across the border from Ukraine loaded with civilians, all fleeing the world's newest war zone.
This train brought hundreds of refugees to safety here in Hungary. The United Nations says more than 800,000 people have fled across Ukraine's borders in just 6 days.
It is a carefully managed procession, families emerging one by one, expatriates from South Asia and Africa, and of course Ukrainians, welcomed by Hungarian officials and aid workers. Each handed a solidarity ticket, a free seat on another train to the Hungarian capital, where more help waits.
They will help them with traveling, with food, with Wi-Fi, and all necessary things, even with hotels.
Among the new arrivals, Anastasia Hrankina, her son Mark, and their cat.
Sharik, his name is Sharik.
They fled Kyiv on the first day of the invasion.
2 days ago, I was thinking that this war is going to finish just in a few days and that we won't need even to leave Ukraine. But now I just can't make any plans. I don't know when I'll see my family again.
The Ukrainian refugees are almost all women and children. Absent here, husbands and fathers, men of fighting age, ordered to stay behind to defend the country.
You're going to Ukraine now?
Sure.
Alexandra Shulenina was on a foreign business trip when Russia invaded. Now she's hurrying back into Ukraine to collect her children.
My husband insists that I protect our children, so I take to my son, to my niece. We go to Europe when my friend waiting for us, and he stay in Ukraine for protect our country.
Anastasia Hrankina's husband is also back in Kyiv, defending the city against Vladimir Putin's invasion.
And what would you tell people in Russia?
I would tell them, just get rid of your president, he is insane.
Safe, but now uprooted, with no idea if and when these people can ever go home.
That's what a war looks like, and the humanitarian crisis will worsen in Ukraine. President Macron of France, after a 90-minute phone conversation with President Putin, has said that he believes the worst is yet to come in Ukraine. President Putin has pretty much said he will not stop till his goal in Ukraine is achieved. Things not looking good for Ukraine as we wrap Debrief. Thanks for watching. Good night.